Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a truly fascinating pivot in human history, a moment that honestly changed our trajectory forever. We're going to look at how ancient humanity transitioned from living in absolute fear of the raw, uncontrollable power of nature to the very beginnings of scientific inquiry. We're going back thousands of years to understand exactly how ancient lightning sparked curiosity and how a terrifying force in the sky eventually became something humans actually wanted to understand, study, and ultimately harness.
So, what happens when a world dominated by terrifying storms discovers a controllable spark right in the palm of a hand? Well, to figure that out, we have to travel back to ancient Greece. This was an era where the natural world was basically a vast, unsolved puzzle. People didn't have the scientific frameworks that we rely on today. Instead, they lived side by side with forces that seemed incredibly volatile and sometimes deliberately aimed right at them. The elements weren't just weather. They were active, sometimes really angry participants in the daily struggle for survival.
Section 1. The Fall of Darkness.
Before the advent of electricity, nightfall wasn't just a time of day. It was this absolute, overwhelming physical presence. As the sun set over the vast stone cities and rugged mountains of the ancient Mediterranean, darkness covered the earth in a way that is honestly kind of hard for us to truly comprehend today. There were no streetlights, no ambient glow from distant highways. The descent into night meant a complete loss of visibility, a deep isolation where the citizens of these early societies had to rely on flickering torches and localized fires, just carrying them through winding streets to push back the heavy curtain of night. And in that environment, humans were incredibly vulnerable. When night fell, you were entirely at the mercy of the unknown. Fire was quite literally your only defense, just a fragile little bubble of safety in an otherwise vast, dark universe. It's really essential to understand this profound sense of smallness. They were building the foundations of Western civilization, right? Monumental architecture, early democracy, foundational philosophy. Yet every single evening, they were reminded of exactly how fragile they were against the sheer, unyielding scale of the natural world surrounding them.
Section 2. Wrath of the Storm. Because, as it turns out, that quiet darkness wasn't the only thing they had to contend with.
The silence of the night was often totally shattered by the uncontrollable power of a Mediterranean storm. We're talking dramatic lightning storms passing directly overhead, dark, ominous clouds dumping heavy rain, and the absolute deafening sound of waves crashing violently against the cliffs. When epic lightning flashes illuminated those vast ancient temples in stark bursts of light, it was raw, untamed power. Since they lacked a scientific explanation for static discharge in the atmosphere, it makes complete sense that ancient peoples interpreted these massive, deadly strikes as the literal weapons of the gods. Just divine wrath being hurled down from Olympus.
During these tempests, human powerlessness really reached its absolute peak. Entire civilizations, with all their huge achievements and burgeoning philosophies, seemed to just shrink away, swallowed completely by the thunder and the rain. When lightning struck a home or a temple, it brought instant, unexplainable destruction. You couldn't negotiate with it. You couldn't control it. You could basically only hide from it, wait for the gods to chill out, and pray that the morning would bring clear skies. This was the macrocosm of electricity, a force of pure, unchecked terror.
Section 3. The Mystery of Amber. So how do we get from cowering in fear to actively investigating the world?
Well, this is where the story gets super fascinating, because we see this profound shift in perspective. Just think about the crazy contrast between the macro and the micro here. Out in the world, you have these massive lightning storms crashing over temples, deadly, unpredictable, and entirely beyond human reach. But inside, maybe sitting quietly by an oil lamp, an ancient thinker is about to experience the exact same fundamental force of nature, just on a scale so tiny and so safe that it actually invites curiosity instead of fear.
We know this today as the amber phenomenon. Basically, it involves taking fossilized tree resin, amber, which the Greeks called electron, and rubbing it against a piece of animal fur. When they did this simple action, something deeply weird happened. The amber suddenly possessed the ability to attract light objects, like dust and small feathers, physically pulling them right through the air. And occasionally, it would even emit tiny, visible electrical sparks. For a person living thousands of years ago, an invisible force pulling objects through empty space was a total mind-bending anomaly. It absolutely defied everything they understood about how the physical world operated.
But here is the real kicker. What marks the true birth of empirical observation here isn't just that they saw this happen, but that they actively sought to document it.
Imagine an ancient thinker sitting there with scrolls spread out across a wooden table, diligently recording this strange, mysterious behavior. They weren't just experiencing a neat parlor trick, they were actively trying to decode nature. By writing it down, comparing notes, and asking why, they were taking the very first, absolutely crucial steps away from mythology and toward a systematic understanding of the physical universe.
And just think about the incredible realization hidden within that simple act of rubbing amber with fur. That tiny crackle, that small spark jumping from the resin to their fingertips, was fundamentally the exact same phenomenon as the terrifying lightning bolts that split the sky outside. The terror of the heavens had literally been reduced to a manageable, observable scale. It was a miniature, controllable force right there in their hands. This is exactly how ancient lightning sparked curiosity, by presenting itself in a form that could actually be studied rather than just feared.
Section 4. Awakening Scientific Curiosity.
Because of this incredibly small interaction with tree resin and fur, humanity began a monumental transition. They moved from the sheer terror of vast, uncontrollable storms to focused, deliberate inquiry. By methodically documenting the attraction of these mysterious glowing particles, they really laid the earliest groundwork for the scientific method. They proved that the forces of nature, even the ones that seemed completely divine or magical, could be observed, replicated, and perhaps, eventually, understood by the human mind. Curiosity was finally beginning to overpower fear.
Decoding these small mysteries shifted humanity's entire relationship with the environment. We evolved from a species that merely hid from the dark and prayed for survival during storms to one that actively questions and interrogates its surroundings. This shift in mindset, this belief that the universe operates on underlying principles that we can actually discover, is the very foundation of all modern science. It represents the exact moment the human mind decided to turn around, face the storm, and ask, how does it work?
So it leaves us with this question. How did the mystery of a tiny glowing particle in ancient Greece connect to the scientific curiosity that powers our modern world today? It is deeply humbling to realize that the invisible force they discovered in that piece of amber is quite literally the electricity powering the screen you're using to watch this explainer right now. Our modern, technologically advanced reality traces its deepest roots back to those curious hands rubbing amber in the dark, just wondering if they had caught a tiny piece of the storm. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. I hope it sparks some curiosity of your own.